screw the Epstein files. I think he's just saying, this is the priorities right now. I'm speaking to them.
I've just never heard him say anything about the victims. It's as simple as that.
You know, my dear sister, I'm still in very deep grief and mourning for my dear brother.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Genuinely so glad you are here for this one because this conversation is one I have been wanting to cover for a while now. So what you are about to watch is a panel of commentators and analysts breaking down one of the most talked about accountability stories in recent memory, the arrest of a senior British royal connected to the Jeffrey Epstein network, and what that moment is forcing people to ask about powerful figures right here in the United States. The panel gets into the Epstein files, the names mentioned in them, and why so many Americans feel like justice is stalled at the worst possible moment. And trust me, some of what gets said in this discussion is going to stop you completely. Do yourself a favor and stay all the way through because the moment toward the end of this clip is the one that has been living rent-free in my head ever since I watched it. Before we jump in, drop a comment and let me know where in the world you are watching from right now. I genuinely love seeing where this community comes from, and it always makes the conversation so much richer. All right, let's get into it.
This is the first time in almost 400 years that a senior member of the British royal family has been arrested. And this monumental moment is now raising questions for President Trump about accountability right here in the U.S. When asked about Andrew's arrest and whether anything similar would happen here, here's how President Trump responded.
Well, you know, I'm the expert in a way because I've been totally exonerated. That's very nice. I can actually speak about it very nicely. I think it's a shame. I think it's very sad. I think it's so bad for the royal family. It's a very, very sad. To me, it's a very sad thing. It's really interesting because nobody used to speak about Epstein when he was alive, but now they speak. But I'm the one that can talk about it because I've been totally exonerated.
I mean, the question right now for a lot of people is, why does there seem to be a much greater appetite overseas for accountability than there is here? And then a secondary question, as you heard the president there, it's always about him, always, as opposed to about the broader concern that people have for justice for the victims here.
Yeah, I was struck by the tone in his voice there, how sad it was. It feels like that's genuine empathy for the people being brought down for this shocking level of corruption. It's more empathy than you hear, for example, when he talks about the death of Jesse Jackson or when he talks about disasters in states governed by Democrats. There was something genuine in there, which was gross. But this is a darkness that just continues to expand, right? Not just the horrible abuse and torture and God knows what else that happened to girls and women, but some of the world's richest and most powerful men trading secrets, getting rich with each other, and the impunity that they thought they had. I mean, I think that's what is terrifically shocking. And I do think there's a demand for accountability in this country, and politicians are going to have to reckon with it.
And remember, the Trump's Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, let me play what he said not long ago about whether there would be anything coming from the DOJ more on the Epstein issue.
In July, the Department of Justice said that we had reviewed the files, the quote Epstein files, and there was nothing in there that allowed us to prosecute anybody. Now, there's a lot of correspondence, there's a lot of emails, there's a lot of photographs, there's a lot of horrible photographs that appear to be taken by Mr. Epstein or people around him, but that doesn't allow us necessarily to prosecute somebody.
Again, I'll ask, how can he be so sure? And how much longer, I think, is that going to fly when it seems to there's a great desire, not just on the part of the victims, but on the part of Americans to see more in terms of, at the very least, investigation and accountability here?
Yeah, I think you are going to see some investigations on this. I mean, the more that's come out. I mean, remember, President Trump's the one that released all this. This wasn't released before him. Biden never released all these, and he had them. So I think it's a testament to him that he did release them. And as you said, this is the first time since 1647, Charles I getting arrested. It's a terrible thing for the royal family. King Charles is going to be here in April. This is not going to go away. He's going to be asked about this here. I'm sure he's unhappy about having to go through that, but he's going to have to go through it. The press is going to be on him on it. And I think ultimately, by the way, you said, this is for men. There's a woman in jail right now. So this was men and women that were doing this. It's a terrible thing that's going on. And it is amazing that someone like Jeffrey Epstein had this kind of power.
A senior royal arrested for the first time in nearly 400 years, and the first thing people wanted to know was, will anything like this ever happen here in America? That question alone tells you everything about where public trust is right now. And here is what hit me immediately. The moment accountability actually happened somewhere else in the world, it forced a mirror up to this country. Because the host said something that I have not been able to shake, that it is always about him, always, as opposed to about the broader concern that people have for justice for the victims. And that is the pattern that people are finally naming out loud. You have to understand something. When a powerful figure responds to a question about victims of serious crimes and manages to make the entire answer about their own personal experience, that is not a mistake. That is a habit. That is how someone thinks when accountability has never actually touched them. And then the commentator said something that genuinely stopped me. He pointed out that the empathy in that voice, for powerful men being brought down, was more genuine than anything heard when talking about the death of Jesse Jackson, or about disasters hitting communities across the country, and his exact words were, there was something genuine in there, which was gross. That line, because he is right. Genuine empathy showed up for the wrong people, and the audience felt it too. Then comes this list. A long list of names mentioned in the Epstein files who have faced 0 consequences, and the host said it plainly. These are big names that are mentioned in the Epstein files who haven't done anything. No charges, no investigation announced, nothing. And what is wild is that this cuts across every political lane. This is not a one-party problem. This is a powerful people problem. And that distinction matters because the moment you make it tribal, you lose the plot entirely. History has shown us this before. Think about how long it took for powerful institutions to face any real accountability after major scandals, whether it was financial corruption, abuse of power, or systemic cover-ups. The pattern is almost always the same. The people at the bottom face consequences first. The people at the top write the rules about what counts as evidence.
That he could, even after being arrested and put in jail, he's meeting with Prince Andrew at the time. I mean, that is remarkable that was going on. And others in this country, you know.
Yeah, there's a long list. I mean, to your point,
yeah.
there's a long list of people so far that have stepped aside. But here's another list. These are big names that are mentioned in the Epstein files who haven't done anything. I mean, there's, of course, Trump. That's a separate issue. Howard Lutnick, RFK Jr., Steve Bannon. I mean, gosh, even MAGA is asking why there are no consequences for him. Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Les Wexner, who was just deposed this week
You
by
left out President
Congress.
Clinton. You left out President Clinton.
Yeah.
President Clinton.
You left out the one Democrat there.
President Clinton is coming to speak before Congress.
Yes.
At the very
As he
least,
should.
none of these other people are.
I think the people who are not in the Epstein files and are not on the list, put those folks aside. I think this is an issue that spans across parties, that what happened in that cabal of powerful, extremely wealthy, the folks who did it, disgusting people, folks want them to be held to account. And you did say there is a woman in jail, but it's so funny that there's only one person and that it is a woman in jail when the accounts of the survivors are that it is men and not just one woman or one man, Jeffrey Epstein, but many, hundreds of victims, and there are not hundreds of people in jail. And so I've said it before, I'll say it again, that math does not math.
I agree.
And because the reason why this now spins into politics is because the Trump administration, officials in the Trump administration, and so many in MAGA made this conspiracy theory come to the forefront and make it be a promise. Now, the files are released, but that isn't justice. Releasing is not persecution for folks who have done wrong. That is the thing that now this administration is going to have to really circle it around and see if they can close this gap. And if this is the administration that does it, good for them. But to date, because you have Todd Blanche saying that nothing else is going to come of it, there's a lot of questions.
Well, and there's too many names that are blacked out in these emails for no reason.
And I don't like it.
There's an email with a name black. You're like, why is this name blacked out?
Yeah.
That makes no sense.
And there's a lot of defensiveness coming from DOJ about why those names are redacted. And they seem to be, again, more concerned about protecting the names of people who they claim are innocent. When, I don't know, I think people want to see any evidence that maybe anybody is being looked at, being questioned.
This is the part that blows my mind completely. Even after an arrest, even while in custody, meetings were still happening. connections were still active. That level of access does not come from nowhere. That comes from relationships built over decades with people who had every reason to keep those relationships quiet. And here is where the conversation gets even sharper. The female commentator dropped what might be the most honest 4 words of this entire discussion. The math does not math. And she is absolutely right. You have accounts from hundreds of victims. You have documented connections to multiple powerful individuals. And at the end of all of it, one person in jail. One. And it happens to be a woman, when survivor accounts repeatedly point to men in positions of power as the ones who caused harm. So that contrast is not an accident. That is a result. And results tell you more about a system than any press conference ever will. Then she said something that I think deserves its own moment. Releasing is not persecution for folks who have done wrong, because there was this narrative being built that releasing files was the victory, that transparency was the finish line, and she dismantled that completely. Releasing documents is the start of accountability. It is not the end. You do not hand someone a map and then tell them the treasure has already been found. And here is what people are not talking about enough. The host pointed out that there is serious defensiveness coming from the DOJ about why certain names remain redacted, and that they seem more concerned about protecting the names of people who they claim are innocent. I mean, that word and claim is doing a lot of heavy lifting, because in a real investigation, you do not protect names by keeping them hidden from the public. You protect names through due process. There is a difference, and that difference is exactly what people are demanding to see right now.
Let me just actually play this. This is Les Wexner. He was, just for context here, Wexner is a very wealthy billionaire. He is the source of a huge sum of Jeffrey Epstein's wealth and has been connected to Epstein for a long time. He's denied allegations that he was involved in the wrongdoing, but here's what he said when he was asked if he was ever contacted.
Has the FBI or DOJ ever directly contacted you or spoken to you about
Not to my knowledge.
Never.
Never.
Did you speak to any law enforcement agency of any kind regarding Jeffrey Epstein's investigation in New York in 2019?
Never. Didn't. No, I don't remember ever talking to any law enforcement agency.
How is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think to everyone's point at this table, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, they were not trafficking young women and children to phantom people, right? And I think that MAGA's base brought this to the forefront of the conversation. They were the ones who got Trump to really listen, because this has been, to your point, it was, kind of maligned as a conspiracy theory 10, 15 years ago. People were QAnon if you said that there was a cabal of elites who were doing this to children. And President Trump had his ear to the ground. He listened to them. And I think that there are supporters out there who are saying, okay, we have these redacted files, but where is the accountability coming from that? That being said, I think 2 things can be true at once. President Trump has begun to release them. We still haven't seen the type of accountability that most people want to see when it comes to children being sex trafficked. 2, polling indicates that this is surprisingly, as much as we talk about it, not as big of a campaign issue as something like immigration, economy, crime. And I think that you see President Trump trying to focus on those things, which is why maybe he comes across as flippant sometimes with Epstein, just because he's saying, okay, here's what the base cares about, here's what the voters are saying. So I don't necessarily know if it's him just saying, screw the Epstein files. I think he's just saying, this is the priorities right now, I'm speaking to them.
I've just never heard him say anything about the victims. It's as simple as that.
My dear sister, I'm still in very deep grief and mourning for my dear brother.
And here's where it gets almost impossible to rationalize. Les Wexner, a billionaire who was documented as the primary source of a massive portion of Jeffrey Epstein's wealth, connected to him for years, sat before Congress and said he never once spoke to any law enforcement agency. Not once. Not a single call. Not a single interview request. Think about what that actually means. You are the financial foundation of someone at the center of one of the most serious investigations in modern American history, and nobody called you, nobody knocked on your door, nobody sent a letter. That is not an oversight. Oversights happen once. This is a pattern. And then, and this is the moment that I keep coming back to, the host said something so simple it almost sounds too obvious. But simple things are powerful precisely because they are undeniable. The host said, I have just never heard him say anything about the victims. It is as simple as that. And you know what? That is as simple as that. Because when you are in a position of power and you speak about a case involving hundreds of survivors, and your instinct is never, not once, to acknowledge the people who actually suffered. That tells you exactly what the priority is. It is not the victims. It has never been the victims. The victims are the reason any of this should matter at all, and that is what makes accountability so urgent. Not as a political talking point, not as a news cycle, but as a basic moral obligation to the people whose lives were permanently changed by what happened to them. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.